Proper email list segmentation is the difference between brands who make 50% of their revenue from email versus those who barely make 20%. Most brands are sending the exact same generic emails to their entire list and wondering why their open rates are declining and their revenue from email is stagnating. Now, after working with dozens of 7- and 8-figure D2C brands, I've seen firsthand how the right segmentation strategy can literally double email revenue overnight while simultaneously improving deliverability. Now, in the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through the exact segmentation framework that we've used to generate millions in additional revenue for the 7- and 8-figure brands who we partnered with. I'm going to show you why segmentation is so important, the 3 core segments to create, advanced segmentation strategies, common mistakes that people make with segmentation, and also how to implement these segments on platforms like Klaviyo. So let's dive in. All right, now before we dive into all the ins and outs of segmentation, what actually is segmentation? Well, with email marketing, you have a list versus a segment. Lists are fixed groups that are manually updated, and segments are updated automatically based off of a given set of criteria. Now, with segments, you have real-time updates based off of customer behavior. Customers can be in multiple segment groups at the same time. You have automatic updates. So basically, as soon as a customer hits a certain criteria, they're added in, and as soon as they no longer hit that criteria, they're removed. They're a lot more sophisticated than having a static list. And really what it is it's the foundation of building personalized email marketing. So what's the point in segmenting? The quickest way to end up in spam is by batching and blasting every single person on your list. Not only does that increase your opportunity to end up in spam, but it also just pisses people off. And the higher the frequency that you have with your email campaigns, the more strict you want to be about who you're sending to. So with segmentation, improved deliverability is a huge thing. You get higher open rates, you get lower bounce rates, and you get better inbox placement. Beyond that, you also get higher conversion rates because at the end of the day, the messaging is way more relevant. You have better timing, and you also can create more targeted offers. So an example here is we actually had a clothing brand recently who previously was just kind of like batching and blasting everyone on their list. And what we ended up doing was segmenting that list based off of 3 different people. The people who were interested in women's clothing, men's clothing, and kids' clothing. And after we did that, we split that for all their flows, for all their campaigns. We had a 135% increase in placed order rate in the abandoned checkout alone. Because like if I'm a dude and I'm looking for guys' clothing and I get an email about women's clothing, I'm not going to be very interested. The other thing here is cost saving. So you end up reducing your sending volume because you're not sending to your entire list every single time. You get a better ROI because of the things that I mentioned before, and you also end up getting lower unsubscribe rates. So all in all, it's a much better approach to email marketing than just batching and blasting everyone. And the biggest thing here is just that it is better for customers. And ultimately, what's better for customers is usually going to be better for you too. It's more relevant, it's more interesting, it's more engaging, and that'll lead to more loyalty, more referrals, and ultimately people coming back again and again and again to purchase from you. Now, there's 1,000 different segments that you can create, but I want to start by giving you kind of a good jumping off point and giving you 3 core segment types to start with. Okay, so the first type of segment that we look at here is the engagement-based segment. Now, engagement-based segments are usually going to be either open or click. Now, what we look at here is how recently have people opened or clicked and how frequently have they opened or clicked. If someone has opened 16 of the last 16 emails that we sent versus someone who opened 1 of the last 16 emails that we sent, there's a huge difference there in engagement, and we want to treat people accordingly. So in order to build this out within Klaviyo, all you need to do here is go into your segment tab, and then you go into open email at least once in the last 30 days. You can do 60 days, you can do 90 days, whatever you want. You can also add other conditions here. So you can say opened and clicked or opened or clicked, whatever you want to do here. And depending on the settings that you use, like if I go in here and I say, okay, we had someone click the email as well in the last 30 days. So you'll see, and this will change. So you'll say someone who opened the email and they also clicked the email. So this is really limiting the amount of people that we're reaching. If you click or, it's going to increase the segment substantially, and it's going to go back to that 50,000. So usually where we'll start is have a 30-day, a 90-day, and 180-day engaged. Now, depending on the size of your list and the frequency that you're sending, you might also want to incorporate like a 60-day engaged or 120-day engaged. But really what we're looking at here with a 30-day engaged is people who have opened an email in the last 30 days, they've clicked an email in the last 30 days, and maybe if you want, they've been active on the site in the last 30 days. With a 90-day engaged segment, it's the exact same thing. Basically, all you need to do here is just go in and you can actually, let's say I want to create this segment. So I'll just say test here, and then you can just go ahead and actually clone that, and then you can change the date. So you don't have to redo the entire thing. If you want to create like a 30, 60, 90, 180-day engaged segment, you just go ahead and create that right away there. Now with the 180-day engaged segment, again, this is going to be used for like broader campaigns. You don't want to use this on every single send, but you can use this for broader campaigns, for sale campaigns. When you're trying to maybe send a text-only email and trying to re-engage people, this can be a great opportunity to use that segment. Now, beyond that, the second type of segment that we use is the purchase history segment. Now, these are going to be more so based off of people's purchase history, as you would probably imagine. And all you need to do here is the same kind of idea, but you're looking at people who have purchased at least once in the last 90 days, and I'll just remove that. So you can see, so there's a lot of different options that we can kind of like use here. And I'll go back to my slides here. So a couple different ways you might want to look at this is look at recent purchasers. So people who have purchased in the last 30 days. You might want to exclude some people from regular promotions. You might want to make sure that people are getting the right post-purchase journey, and maybe you're removing some people from campaigns just while they're waiting on their product. You might want to make sure that VIPs are getting specific types of emails. For example, if someone's purchased 3 or 4 times, maybe you want to give them exclusive access to a new product that you're launching. Give them the first opportunity to try it before anyone else. People love that. It doesn't cost you anything to do it. And then finally, you look at first-time buyers or even non-buyers here, right? So first-time buyers, you might want to treat differently than repeat purchasers, and repeat purchasers, you might want to treat differently than VIPs. And obviously, if someone's never purchased before, you kind of want to hint them up as many times as you can until they do purchase. Now, the thing to consider here too is you could layer these engagement and purchase history segments as well. So you could say someone who has opened an email in the last 90 days, but they haven't purchased. You could say someone who's opened an email in the last 30 days and they have purchased. You can layer this so many different ways, but the core thing always comes back to the customer. What makes sense for them? So for example, if you sell AirPods and someone just bought some AirPods, does it make sense to have an email go out with a product feature talking all about how AirPods are so great? No, because one of 3 things is true. They've either not received their package yet, they either received it and they love it, or they received it and they hate it. Any one of those situations, it doesn't make sense. What would make sense though, is if it's a first-time buyer, this is the first time they bought those AirPods, is, hey, here's how to use it. Here's how to get the most out of your AirPods. Here's how to achieve your desired result. Because that's what we really want to do here. We want to make sure that ultimately the customer journey is a better one because of the contact we're having with people. Now, the third type of segment that we create is the browse behavior segment. Now, this is going to be really based off of your brand, and there's a number of different ways that you can do this, but really what this comes down to is looking at a product category. So you would say like what someone has done. Again, you could say viewed page, viewed product, and then you'd say at least once in the last 90 days. And then what you want to do is you would add page equals, and then you would enter the value of that page. So you would say like this URL, or you could even say like the page contains the text, and then you would add the text that you want to include here. So if you want to, let's say you want to hit up everyone who checked out jeans. If you have a collection for that, great. You should have like a view collection here. But if you don't have a collection for that, you could just say like, hey, anywhere where the product, so it could be like viewed product at least once in the last 90 days, where the name equals contains the text, and then you would say jeans, right? So there's a lot of different things you can do here. And the reason that this starts to become really interesting is because then you start hitting people up based off of where they're at, based off of their interests, right? So I'll show you a couple other examples here, but a couple different ways you can kind of segment based off of the browse behavior is product viewers. So people checking out a certain product, but not adding to cart or not purchasing. Category interest. So people looking at specific categories. Maybe that's weight loss for a supplement brand. Maybe it's mass gainers for a supplement brand. Maybe it's just all men's apparel, or maybe it's all women's apparel. And then you can also look at that based off of frequency of views. Like if someone has viewed a product 17 times in the last 4 days, they are probably hella interested, and you just need to like give them a slight nudge and they will buy, right? Cart abandoners, totally like a little bit different, but really, again, what you can do here is look at maybe the value that people have added to cart. You could look at different categories. You could look at, for different categories of your products, you might have different objections that people have. So there's a lot that you can do here. And then same thing with categories. So there's a lot that you can do here. Now, one of the really cool things you can do is use predictive analytics. Now, you can only use this if you have enough data to actually support it and make it meaningful, but you can look at when someone's next predicted order will be. You can look at the customer lifetime value prediction. You can look at whether they're a churn risk or not. You can go through a lot of different things and look at how you can use Klaviyo's predictive features for your benefit, but usually this is a lot later on. And if you're watching this video, I'd probably start with the initial things first. This is kind of something that you can strive towards and can be really beneficial, but it just takes a little bit of time to get going. The other thing that you can do is geographic segmentation. So this can be really helpful, especially if you have brick and mortar stores or you're launching in a certain location. So you could have like location-based offers. You could have time zone optimization for like when you're sending to people. You could have regional preferences. So like it could be, we have a client who has operations in a bunch of different hemispheres. So if we're selling in Canada, the United States, for example, summertime is going to be way different than if we're promoting the same time of year. So like July, let's say, in Australia or New Zealand, it's the exact opposite, right? So we're going to want to make sure we're promoting different products because people could be interested in different things, especially if it's something like apparel. Another opportunity here is cross-selling. Now you can do this with flows. You can also do this with campaigns, but you can start with complementary products. So things that just like will complement the product that someone just purchased. You could look at category combinations. If someone purchased like a table, for example, but they didn't buy chairs to match that table, you can have a cross-sell for that. You can do time-based recommendations. So based off of like someone's use of a certain supplement, you can look at cross-selling something else after a certain point that they probably will need after using that first product. There's a whole wide variety of things you can do here, but that's just kind of like scratching the surface. Okay, so many brands get segmentation completely wrong. A lot don't even do it, but the ones who do segmentation or think they're segmenting don't do it very well. So here's some best practices that you can use to improve your segmentation and ultimately to improve your revenue for your email. The first thing is just maintenance. So looking at building a sunset unengaged segment, updating your criteria frequently, looking at removing inactive people, monitoring size changes. So if you're looking at like your 90-day engaged, for example, and you have 100,000 people in there on January 1st, and then you look back on February 1st and you only have 90,000 people, or maybe it grows. If it's shrinking, what's going on? Why is that happening? Are people receiving too many emails? Are we sending the wrong type of content? We have to dig in deeper and try to understand what's going on and why are people not super engaged. But it's really important that you do this consistently on a month-to-month basis. Weekly doesn't really make sense. Month-to-month starts to make sense. The next thing is just testing, because what works for one brand or one business doesn't necessarily work the best for another brand. So what this comes down to is like testing certain segments. You could send a email to one segment and then to another one. You can send to multiple segments in the same one, and then you can look at the analytics and see where were most of the purchases coming from, what do the open rates look like, click rates look like, etc. Just monitoring that performance and then looking at overall engagement metrics, purchase metrics, etc. And then also kind of like putting on your like customer cap. That sounds super nerdy, but like think about things through the customer's lens. At the end of the day, like what really matters is like their perception, and you will probably have a pretty good intuition. If you've been running your business for a while, you should have a pretty good intuition about what your customers want. Now, if you don't know, ask them, like just straight up ask them. And then finally tracking that ROI. Like at the end of the day, open rates are great, click rates are great, all of the engagement metrics are great, but what really matters is like, what's the ROI look like? The last thing here, this is more of like I'm OCD and this helps with that a lot, but this really does help to organize things. If you have a clear naming system, if you track the dates on when you're making changes, if you do make changes to segments, if you're starring campaigns or things like that, or if you're changing a strategy, date when you change that strategy, identifying with campaigns or with segments or with tests, identifying what the purpose of that test or what the purpose of that campaign is. And it also just makes it way easier for collaborating with a team. If you are the sole person who's doing this and you need to pass it along to someone, if someone gets a total wish-wash of like 1,000 different campaigns with no nomenclature, it's a real pain in the ass to try to figure out what's going on. Okay, so now that we've covered a lot of this, what are some common mistakes that you want to avoid if you are starting with your segmentation or you're just trying to get better with it? Well, the first thing is just technical mistakes, using the wrong conditions, missing exclusions. This is really important because let's say you're using the wrong conditions and you use and versus or versus and. That's going to completely change the segment, and it could completely ruin what you wanted to do initially. Missing exclusions is another big one, and the reason for this is because if you're sending to a certain segment, you probably also want to make sure certain people aren't receiving that. Just be cognizant of who you're excluding, who you're including, and make sure that there's no overlap with those segments. And if there is overlap, just that you're aware of it, right? Like if you have a 30-day engaged, a 90-day engaged, 180-day engaged, yeah, there's going to be overlap, but you just want to know, obviously you know that there's overlap, but you want to know when to use which one when. And the other piece is just strategic mistakes. So this is like over segmentation. Like what we want to do is be thoughtful of how many people we're sending to and if this segmentation is even going to be meaningful. If you're sending to, if you have a list of 100,000 people and you create a segment of like 24 people, it's probably not going to be very effective unless you've got some crazy convoluted strategy, but then oftentimes like simplicity wins. So if you're over segmenting, this is not going to do all that well because you're being way too harsh on who should be receiving what. Ignoring data quality. This is another big one. If you're looking at making any sort of changes or making any sort of tests, if you're just ignoring data quality is another one. And then also poor maintenance. So if you just set it and forget it with all of these segments, you might be okay, but like ignoring data quality is another one. And then just poor maintenance is another one, right? Like you never want to just set it and forget it. And I think that's where I see a lot of brands make a mistake of just like set it and forget it. This is their strategy for now and forever. And they never make any changes or never kind of like assess how things are going based off of the trajectory. Because you always want to, again, fall back on the data, see what's working, see what's not, and make sure that things are being maintained properly as well. Now, if you don't want to do all of this yourself and you do have a D2C brand doing at least $50,000 a month in revenue, I'd invite you to apply below. There should be a link below this video where you can apply to work with us. And if you do want to learn a little bit more and want to see exactly what we can do, go check out this case study video where we scale this brand from virtually zero to $225,000 in email marketing revenue in just a couple months. So hope you enjoy that. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll chat soon.